Jessie L. Weston's From Ritual to Romance, Chapter 6, The Symbols. In the previous chapters, we have discussed the Grail legend from a general rather than a specific point of view, i.e., we have endeavored to ascertain what was the real character of the task imposed upon the hero, and what the nature and value of his achievement was. We have been led to the conclusion that the achievement was, in the first instance, of an altruistic character. It was no question of advantages, temporal or spiritual, which should accrue to the quester himself, but rather of definite benefits to be won for others, the freeing of a ruler and his land from the dire results of a punishment which, falling upon the king, was fraught with the most disastrous consequences for his kingdom. We have found, further, that this close relation between the ruler and his land, which resulted in the ill of one becoming the calamity of all, is no mere literary invention proceeding from the fertile imagination of a 12th century poet, but deeply rooted popular belief of practically immemorial antiquity and inexhaustible vitality. We can trace it back thousands of years before the Christian era. We find it fraught with decisions of life and death today. Further, we find that in that belief, a tendency to express itself in certain ceremonial practices which retain, in a greater or less degree, the character of the ritual observances, of which they are the survival. Mr. E.K. Chambers, in the medieval stage, remarks that if the comparative study of religion proves anything, it is that the traditional beliefs and customs of the medieval are present in the modern times, are in 9 cases out of 10, but the detritus of so-called heathen mythology and so-called heathen worship, doesn't matter whether you're pagan or heathen or whatnot, same basic mythology, different physical culture maybe, enduring with but little external change in the shadow of a hostile faith. This is notably true of the village festivals and their ludi. Their full significance only appears when they are regarded as fragments of forgotten cults, the native cults addressed by a so-called primitive folk to the beneficent entities of field and wood and river, are the shadowing populace of its own dreams. We may, I think, take it that we have established at least the possibility that in the Grail romances we possess in literary form an example of the detritus above referred to, the fragmentary record of the secret ritual of a fertility cult. Having reached this hypothetical conclusion, our next step must be to examine the symbols of this cult, the group of mysterious objects which forms the central point of the action, a true understanding of the nature of these objects being as essential for our success as interpreters of the story as it was for the success of the quester in days of old. We must ask whether these objects, the Grail itself, whether cup or dish, the lance, the sword, the stone, one and all invested with a certain atmosphere of awe, credited with strange virtues, with sanctity itself, will harmonize with the proposed solution, will range themselves fitly and fairly within the framework of this hypothetical ritual. That they should do so is a matter of capital importance. Were it otherwise, the theory advanced might well, as some of my critics have maintained, never get beyond the region of ingenious speculation. But it is precisely upon that fact that the theory of origin, and so far as criticism has gone, this theory alone does permit of a natural and unforced interpretation of these related symbols, that I rely as one of the most convincing proofs of the correctness of my hypothesis. Before commencing the investigation, there is one point which I must desire to emphasize, viz. The imperative necessity for treating the symbols or talismans, call them what we will, on the same principle as we have treated the incidents of the story, i.e. the connected whole, that they be not separated from the one from the other, and made the subject of independent treatment, but that they be regarded in their relation the one to the other, and that no theory of origin be held admissible which does not allow for that relation as a primitive and indispensable factor. It may be that the modern tendency to specialize, which is apt to blind scholars to the essential importance of regarding their object of study as a whole, that fosters in them a habit of focusing their attention upon that one point or incident of the story which lends itself to treatment to their special line of study, and which induces them to minimize or ignore those elements which lie outside their particular range. But, whatever the cause, it is indubitable that this method of criticism by isolation has been, and is, one of the main factors